Welcome to This Explainer. If you've spent your weekends fighting a losing battle with your yard, pouring money into fertilizers and weed killers, only to end up with the same patchy, weed-filled mess, you're not alone. Today, we're cutting through all the hardware store hype. We're going to look at exactly why most lawn recovery efforts fail, and more importantly, how to actually fix yours without wasting another dime on gimmicks.
Now, if you happen to have a bag of grass seeds sitting out in the garage right now, ready to spread this weekend because your lawn has gone mostly to weeds, I need you to just stop for a minute. Hang on. I say this because there's a very real chance that if you throw that seed down this weekend, in 3 weeks you're going to be staring at the exact same weedy lawn, just $60 lighter. And the most frustrating part? It wouldn't be because the seed was bad. It wouldn't be because you forgot to water it. It's because of a few specific invisible traps that the garden centers almost never warn you about.
To fix this permanently, we actually have to change how we look at the whole problem. Weeds aren't the disease in a struggling lawn. They're just a symptom. Think about the basic biology of how a weed actually gets established. For any weed seed to grow, it absolutely needs sunlight hitting bare soil. In a thick, healthy lawn, if a weed seed blows in and lands on that dense canopy of grass, it never reaches the dirt. It never gets the sunlight. It just sits there in the dark until it dies. Weeds don't invade healthy turf. They just move into the gaps that are already there. So simply spraying everything dead without fixing the thinning grass, that just leaves you with bare soil, which is literally the single most weed-friendly surface on Earth.
And that brings us to the first major trap. It involves pre-emergent herbicides. That's the active ingredient in crabgrass preventers and most of those weed and feed bags you see stacked up every spring. What this stuff does is create an invisible chemical barrier right there in your soil. It works by attacking the very first tiny root a seed puts out, right at the exact moment of germination, long before it ever breaks the surface. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. That chemical? It cannot tell a weed seed from a grass seed. It kills both.
This is exactly where so many well-meaning folks get caught. This chemical barrier usually stays active in your soil for about 12 weeks. Here's how this plays out in yards everywhere. Spring arrives, and you responsibly put down a preventer. 2 months go by, you're in week 8, you decide the lawn looks thin, so you spread some expensive grass seed over it. And nothing comes up. You probably think you bought junk seed, but the seed was perfectly fine. It germinated, it put out its first little root, and then that root hit the chemical barrier you laid down 2 months earlier, and it died underground. You paid for weed prevention, and well, it worked exactly as advertised. So before you seed, take inventory. If you put down a pre-emergent, your seeding date is dictated by this 12-week clock, not your weekend plans.
There's a second timing trap to watch out for too. Post-emergent herbicides. These are the selective sprays you use to kill existing broadleaf weeds like dandelions and clover. Well, these also linger in the soil. As a rule of thumb, you need to plan for a strict 4 to 6 week waiting period between applying a post-emergent and putting down new seed. Always check your specific bottle's label, but keep in mind this creates a pretty tight squeeze. If you spray too late in the summer, by the time that 4 to 6 week waiting period clears, you might have completely missed your optimal fall seeding window.
Okay, so let's say your timing is perfect. The chemical clock is clear, and you're ready to seed those bare patches. The standard move here is grabbing a bag of topsoil from the garden center to cover the seed, right? Keeps it moist, hides it from the birds, makes total sense. Except that standard heavy bag of topsoil is very often loaded with viable weed seeds. You spend all spring fighting weeds, you finally reseed, and 6 weeks later that exact patch is full of a brand new crop of weeds, sometimes things you've never even seen in your yard before. You didn't fail at reseeding, you literally planted those weeds yourself, hidden right inside the top dressing.
The fix for this costs about $2, and it guarantees you are planting grass and only grass. Skip the standard topsoil entirely for this step. Instead, use sterilized peat moss or coconut coir to top dress your new seed. This is the exact same material people use for starting delicate tomato seeds indoors. It's been treated so it carries absolutely zero viable weed seeds, it holds moisture perfectly, it hides the seed from the birds, and a single, inexpensive compressed block of it will cover plenty of area for spot treatments.
Before you drop a single seed, though, we need to talk about ground prep. Grass seed needs direct, firm contact with the soil to actually sprout. If your ground is hard, compacted dirt, spreading seed on top is just feeding the local birds. So I want you to try this really simple test today. Take a long screwdriver, walk out to your lawn, and push it straight down into the soil. If it slides in several inches without much resistance, you've got decent ground. But if it stops dead after an inch or two, your soil is heavily compacted.
If you hit that hard wall with a screwdriver, you've got to fix the compaction. And I don't mean buying those silly spike shoes that just shove the hard dirt sideways. You need true core aeration.
the kind of machine that physically pulls small plugs of soil right out of the ground. And here's a real secret to this whole process. Aerating and overseeding on the exact same day is one of the highest return moves in all of lawn care. Those thousands of small holes act as natural protected little seed pockets. The seed falls in, it's surrounded by soil, and it's shaded from the drying sun.
Now, I want to be completely honest with you about when not to seed. This is really important. There are 3 specific situations where you just have to hold off on seeding entirely and treat the weeds first. First, if you have heavy, creeping weeds, things like ground ivy or nutsedge, they will physically smother fragile new grass. Second, if you've got dense, thick mats of dead crabgrass, that thatch acts like a roof. It physically blocks your new seed from ever reaching the dirt, so it has to be raked out first. And third, if more than half of your lawn is broadleaf weeds like dandelions or clover, treat that heavy infestation first. Don't try to fight a massive weed battle and nurture delicate new seedlings at the exact same time. It just doesn't work.
When your lawn is finally cleared to seed, picking the right bag is crucial. You have to match the seed to your climate. You're looking for cool season grasses like fescue and bluegrass for the north, and warm season grasses like Bermuda and zoysia for the south. But you need to pay close attention to the label on the back of the bag. Avoid the cheap blends that are loaded with annual ryegrass. Annual ryegrass is just a cheap filler. Sure, it germinates incredibly fast and it looks great for about 6 weeks, but then it dies completely, leaving you with thin, bare patches all over again. Also, always check the date on the bag. Seed loses its viability over time, especially if it's been sitting in some hot warehouse all summer. Now here's a tip that costs absolutely nothing, and it might honestly be the single most valuable thing we discuss in this explainer. Raise your mower's deck. Just move it up a notch or 2. Remember that weed seeds need sunlight on bare soil to sprout. When you scalp your grass and cut it short, you open up the canopy and invite the sun all the way down to the dirt. When you let it grow a bit taller, the grass naturally shades its own soil. It literally denies weed seeds the light they need to survive. Plus, taller grass grows much deeper roots, which makes it far more drought tolerant and keeps it thick through the brutal summer heat.
Once your seed is down, your watering technique has to change completely. More new seed dies from bad watering than almost anything else. Germination watering is the exact opposite of normal lawn watering. A brand new seed has 0 roots. It lives entirely in the top ½ inch of the soil. If that top layer dries out even once after the seed starts to sprout, the seedling dies and it won't come back. So during germination, water lightly and frequently. You just want to keep the surface consistently damp. But once the grass is up and you've mowed it a couple of times, you must make a hard transition to deep, infrequent watering. That transition is exactly what forces those young roots to stretch deep into the soil to find water, building a truly durable lawn.
All right, let's methodically pull all of this together into a definitive blueprint you can actually use. Step 1, take inventory. Check the garage for what went on the lawn in the last 12 weeks so you avoid that invisible pre-emergent trap. Step 2, identify the specific weeds you are actually fighting. Step 3, if you're dealing with smothering creeping weeds or a 50% broadleaf takeover, treat those heavily right now and mark your calendar for a seed date 4 to 6 weeks out. Step 4, do the screwdriver test and rent a core aerator if your ground is compacted. And Step 5, choose a high-quality seed matched to your specific climate, staying far away from those cheap annual ryegrass fillers.
Continuing on with the blueprint. Step 6, target the right seeding window, which for most regions is late summer into early fall. Step 7, use the $2 trick. Top dress your seed with sterilized peat moss or coir, never garden center topsoil. Step 8, nail that watering transition, shifting from light and frequent to deep and infrequent. Step 9, raise that mower deck and keep it there to permanently shade the soil. And Step 10, I want to set honest expectations here. Plan to repeat this exact process next fall. A heavily weedy lawn usually doesn't become a golf course in one season, but doing this systematically across 2 falls, that will genuinely, completely transform it.
You almost certainly do not need to do the brutal, expensive work of killing your entire lawn and starting over from bare dirt. If you nuke the yard, you're really just leaving yourself with the most weed-friendly surface imaginable. Listen, most lawns that look like an absolute lost cause are actually incredibly recoverable because the grass isn't gone. It's just been temporarily squeezed out of space. It's waiting for the room to come back. You just have to give it that room.
I'm really curious to hear where you're starting from with all this. Tell me down in the comments what percentage of your lawn is weeds right now. Did that invisible pre-emergent trap catch you in the past? Ultimately, building a great lawn isn't about fighting nature. It's just about understanding the rules of the game a little better than the weeds do. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing so we can keep fixing things together. Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and I'll see you next time.